Our next lesson is called Constructing Exponential Functions. So today's goal is to be able to write the exponential function or model that represents the situation. So you're writing equations today. And so we'll follow a very similar format as we did with linear. We'll give you different scenarios that you may be faced with and talk about how we could get the information we need to write the equation. So we'll start with seeing how to read the chart. Across the top, you've got given, and it'll tell you what you're given in bold at the heading of each column. Each row will tell you what we're looking at. So the problem, how to find the y-intercept, what to do for the growth or decay factor, and then finally writing the equation. So it says we write the equation of an exponential function by determining the y-intercept, which is going to be 0a, that initial amount, and the growth or decay factor, which is our b value, and replacing the numbers a and b into the equation f of x equals a times b to the x. So our first problem is a graph with all points clearly identifiable. So we're going to do this from a graph here. We're looking at this picture. I'm going to plot 2 points that I can very clearly see. That would be that point right there, which is 0, 4. And I'll plot this point, which is 1, 2. I can very easily find 2 points on the graph. So we'll start with finding the y-intercept. We have to find that initial amount that will go in for our a value. If it's a graph, you can find the y-intercept right on the graph. So we would go to the graph and see that it's crossing the y-axis at 0, 4. Remember, that's the then y-intercept, which is in the form 0a. So that means that our a value is 4, which is nice and easy to find from the graph. Next, after finding the y-intercept, we have to find the growth or decay factor. So this is very similar to the one that we had to do for finding the y-intercept of a linear function. You have to remember that the points that we're given either on the graph or in the table are solutions. So we can use that as our x and y values in order to find other things. So here, I already know a is 4, so I can plug that into the formula, y equals ab to the x. And if I pick one of the points off of my graph, says a point, I'll pick 1, 2. That gives me an x and a y value, and then we can plug all those things into the generic formula to solve for the missing piece, which in our case would be the letter b. So in y equals ab to the x, I know the y value is 2, the a value is 4, I don't know the b value, so I'm going to keep that a b, and my exponent is 1. So this is really 2 equals 4, b to the first is just b. So if I want to get b alone, I will divide both sides by 4, which means 1/2 is my b value, which would make sense. If I look at that graph, it's decreasing, decaying. So that value should be between 0 and 1. So now I have everything I need to write the actual equation. I just have to put everything in the right spot. We're going to write f of x equals the a value was 4. The rate at which this was decaying, this is a decay problem, was 1/2. And then x as our exponent. So we just wrote the equation. I would like you to try 2 points with the y-intercept identifiable. This is very similar to the graph. The graph, I was able to pick off the 2 points. Here, everything's clearly identifiable, which means one of the points in the table or one of the points that's given to you is the y-intercept. You have to find the b value in order to write your equation. So at this time, I'd like you to pause the video, try the right column, 2 points with y-intercept identifiable by yourself, and just resume the video to check your answer. Now that you had a chance to try on your own, let's go over it. When you look at this here, 2 points with y-intercept identifiable, it could either be given to you as 2 coordinates, written with parentheses, an x and a y, or they could give you that same information in a table of values. You tackle the problem the same either way. So I circled where the y-intercept is. You also could do that for the 0, 20. Okay? So when it comes time to do the y-intercept section of finding what we need, we're just going to look from the ordered pairs. 0, 20 is telling me that 20 is the a value. Then, just like we did for the graph where everything was identifiable, we're going to use the a value of 20. We're going to pick 1 point. So I picked 1,280 as my point, as to be my x and my y. And then I'm going to do everything that we talked about here. We're going to use y equals ab to the x. And in for y goes 1280. In for a is 20. Then we have b to the third. You would divide both sides by 20 to get 64 equals b to the third. And to undo something being to the third power, you would do cube root, and you would get 4 for your b value. So that makes the equation f of x equals 20 times 4 to the x. So now we'll move on to the portion where we have information hiding, and you will need your graphing calculator for this. So in the first one on the left, it says a graph hiding information. So we see 2 points have been clearly identified, but unlike when we did it the first time, the y-intercept is not one of the points that's identified. So the first thing we have to do is realize that our graphing calculator is going to be the main source of information for us here, okay? And what I do think is helpful is to make sure you kind of take the points on the graph and make a quick table of values. So I'm going to make just a quick little table of values with the 2 points that we have, 1, 6, and 3, 54. Because we're about to enter this information into the calculator, and I want to make sure you have it organized in the way it will look. So we are going to run what's called an exponential regression in the graphing calculator. This is something that has a statistics application. We will do statistics later in the year, but I want to teach you this now because it will give you all the information you need to write the equation. So it says enter the points into the calculator lists. Place the data in L1 and L2. So I'm going to go up here and I'm just going to put that this side would be L1, the x side, and this side would be L2, the y side. And in all of this, the directions are already typed for you so that you can go back and look at them at any time. It says to do this, we're going to use the keys stat. We're going to pick number 1, which is edit, and we're going to type the values into the lists. Okay, so again, L1 should be your x values, and L2 should be your y values. So let's take a look at the graphing calculator. We're going to follow the directions that were in the box. So we're going to hit the stat button. So I want you to find second, which is blue. Go down and see that alpha is green. You're going to go 2 spots to the right and see the button that says stat. That's the button we're going to hit. And you can see number 1 says edit. So I'm going to hit number 1. And then there should be a bunch of lists at the top, L1, L2, etc. So remember, we said in L1, we were going to do the x values. So that'd be 1, enter, and 3, enter. And then you're going to arrow over to the right, and you're going to type your y values, 6, enter, and 54, enter. Then, because this function is exponential, we have the calculator determine the exponential regression. So again, your calculator will do this for you. We're going to hit stat. We're going to arrow over to calculate, and we're going to pick 0 because that's the one that will run an exponential regression. So let's demonstrate that on the calculator. So I would hit the Stat button. I'm going to arrow over to the right to go to Calculate. And then it's hard for you to see right now, but if you go all the way down, 0 is exponential regression. So you can just automatically hit 0. You can arrow down and hit Enter, whatever works for you. I'm going to hit 0. When you do this, it's going to ask you what lists you're using for X. And by default, it should always be L1 and L2. So hopefully your X list says L1, your Y list says L2. Don't have to worry about a frequency list or anything else. So you would just want to make sure you hit enter all the way down until it says enter for it to give you your answers. Now, if for some reason the wrong list is there, look at your graphing calculator and look at the keypad of numbers. If I look at number 1, in the top left above that is L1. Number 2, in the top left above that is L2. 3, in the top left is L3. So if I ever had the wrong list or wanted to use different lists, you would just have to hit second in one of your number keys to get the list that you want. So when you do hit enter, you should get all of the information you need to write the equation for your exponential function. You'll see the form there, y equals ab to the x. It's telling you that a value is 2, the b value is 3. So I have my answers I need in order to write my equation. So here, I just would write down that a equals 2, and b equals 3. That came right from doing the regression on my calculator. So now I have exactly what I need to write my equation. I know that this is now f of x equals the a value is 2, the b value is 3 to the x. So honestly, you could use the exponential regression in every situation if you wanted to, as long as you have points that you can use as L1 and L2. I just think that if you have the y-intercept, it's quicker to do it the other way, especially if you don't remember how to run the keys, especially early on as we're just learning this. So you have to know all strategies in order to be successful. So we're going to look at the right-hand side. It says 2 points with y-intercept not identifiable. So this is extremely similar to the graph. I've got 2 coordinates still, or 2 coordinates from the table, but neither one of them is the y-intercept. So what I'd like you to do is try the second one on your own, following the same procedure that we just did for the graph where information was hiding. So you're going to enter your points in L1 and L2. You're going to hit Stat, Edit to do that. And then you will calculate the exponential regression by doing Stat, Calculate, and choosing choice 0 to see if you can come up with your equation. So pause the video, try this one on your own, and then resume the video to go over your answers. So this one is very similar to the graph. L1 is your x values, 2 and 5. L2 is your y values, 64 and 1. So in the place where it says to put the data in L1 and L2, you might want to write down what I did underneath. L1 are the x values, L2 are the f of x values. So you should have hit Stat, Edit, and your x column should have been 2, 5, which is L1, meaning your L1 column should be L1 or 2 and 5. And then your f of x or L2 column should have been 64 and 1. So then when you hit Stat, arrow over to Calculate, and choose number 0 for exponential regression, you should have found that the a value was 1024 and your b value was 0.25, or that would be the same as 1/4. So when you write your equation, you can use the decimal value or the fractional value. So the calculator gave you the decimal, so I wrote the equation with the decimal. F of x equals 1024 as my a value, my b value 0.25 raised to the x. So now you know how you can write the equation for these exponential functions. So very similar to what we did at the end of our lesson when we were writing linear equations, I have here at the bottom that we determined that the equation for the graph on the right, this is the one we started with, was f of x equals, and we had 4 times 1/2 to the x. So I want to know, how do you determine if your equation is correct? So I'd like you to pause the video and think about this, write down your ideas, and then resume the video to go over the answers. So you have some options here. You could use the graphing calculator. I would go to my y equals screen. I would type in 4 times 1/2 to the x. I would hit zoom 6 and see what the graph looks like, see if it matches my graph. And I could also do second graph to look at the table to see if the points that I actually am identifying on my graph are the points that are really supposed to be there, because they'll be there in the table. Or, like we've done in the past, you can pick a point and plug it in. So I picked a different point than the 2 we used originally. I would suggest you do the same, just in case there was a mistake made. So I picked -1/8. So I'm doing f of -1, and I'm hoping that that value turns out to be 8. So f of -1 means I'm replacing the exponent with a -1. I can type that right into my calculator, and I already know that f of -1 is 8 by looking at the graph, so I do end up with 8 equals 8, and I see by picking a point that my equation is correct as well. So this concludes our lesson on constructing exponential functions.